You weren't born to beg for connection. You were born to radiate it. Listen to me carefully. There is a strength inside you right now that's louder than loneliness, deeper than doubt, and more powerful than any external validation this world can offer. The day you finally realize that your happiness is not dependent on who walks into your life, but who you choose to become. That's the day your real life begins. Too many people are chasing noise. They're chasing company, attention, distractions, anything that silences the discomfort of being alone. But let me tell you something with absolute certainty. If you can learn to sit with yourself in silence and find peace, you have unlocked a superpower. Because the person who can walk alone is the person who can walk anywhere. Being happy alone doesn't mean you don't value relationships. It means you no longer need them to fill a void. That void? It's not loneliness. It's untapped power. It's unrecognized worth. And it's your job to fill it with purpose, not people. You don't need another person to complete you. You need a mission that fuels you, values that ground you, and a future that excites you. Pain is your greatest teacher. Have you ever been in a room full of people and still felt empty? That's not because you are alone. That's because you are disconnected from yourself. Stop looking outward for the thing that only inward work can build. You don't escape loneliness by running from it. You overcome it by growing through it. Face the silence, conquer it, make it your training ground. This is where most people break. But you're not most people. You are made to endure the storm so you can become the storm. Let the isolation forge your focus. Let the solitude sharpen your standards. Let the quiet moments reveal the undeniable truth. You are enough as you are, and your value doesn't come from being seen, but from knowing who you are even when no one's watching. You grow strong enough to be happy alone when you stop seeing solitude as punishment and start seeing it as preparation. The world will test you. It will try to convince you that your worth is measured by your followers, your relationship status, your popularity. But you know better now. Because when you can stand tall, unshaken, unbothered, and unbreakable, that's freedom. It's time to stop waiting. Stop waiting for someone to choose you, validate you, fix you, or fill you. You are not broken. You are becoming. And in your becoming, you are building a life so full, so rich, and so purpose-driven that whether you're in a room full of people or walking alone in silence, you still feel alive. You don't need to fear being alone. You need to master it. Solitude is not the enemy. It's the beginning of a deeper relationship with yourself. In fact, the ability to stand in your own presence without feeling the need to escape is one of the greatest powers a human being can develop. Most people think solitude is a punishment, something to be avoided, but the truth is it's the training ground for personal greatness. It's where you strip away the noise, distractions, and expectations that have been weighing on your identity. It's in the quiet that you begin to hear your own voice clearly, perhaps for the first time in your life. When you're always surrounded by others, you unconsciously adopt their thoughts, their moods, their energy. You adapt, conform, and adjust to fit in, often without realizing how much of yourself you're leaving behind. But when you step into solitude with intention, you step into alignment. You confront your truth without filters. You get to ask yourself powerful questions. What do I believe? What do I value? What do I want to become? These aren't questions that can be answered in the noise of the crowd. They require stillness and they demand courage. That courage is what most people lack. It takes a bold spirit to sit with yourself and not run. It takes strength to face the thoughts that surface in the absence of external chatter. But what those thoughts reveal are not weaknesses, they are signals. Signals pointing to what you need to address, to heal, to grow. Solitude allows those signals to come to light. And once they do, you have the opportunity to build from the inside out. Solitude isn't emptiness, it's potential. It's space, mental, emotional, and spiritual space that allows growth to occur. Think of it like a blank canvas. You have the freedom to paint the life you want with no interference, no judgment, and no pressure to perform. In solitude, you rediscover the fire within, the quiet confidence that says, I don't need to be seen to be valuable. I am enough as I am. That internal knowing becomes your foundation. When you master solitude, you stop seeking approval because you've already accepted yourself. You stop chasing people because you've finally found peace in your own company. That's not arrogance, it's wholeness, and it's rare. Most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid being alone, attaching themselves to relationships, distractions, routines, anything that fills the silence. But those things are often band-aids, temporary fixes that keep them from dealing with what's really inside. You don't become powerful by avoiding pain. You become powerful by walking through it. Sitting in solitude forces you to sit with the uncomfortable, the unresolved, the unexplored. And through that process, you don't just find answers, you discover yourself. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to lead yourself. You stop waiting for someone else to give you direction because your inner compass finally becomes clear. In solitude, you also gain control over your thoughts, your emotions, and your reactions. You become more intentional with your time, your energy, and your attention. You stop reacting to the world and start responding to it with purpose. You're no longer easily swayed by trends, opinions, or pressures because you know who you are, and that clarity gives you unmatched power. You walk differently, speak differently, and think differently. You no longer feel the need to fill the silence because the silence itself becomes your strength. Stop outsourcing your joy to people, places, or circumstances. The moment you place your happiness in someone else's hands, you lose control over your life. And when your sense of worth is dictated by how others treat you, how they perceive you, or whether they choose you, you put yourself in an emotional prison. That's not living, that's surviving on scraps of external approval. True happiness doesn't come from applause, attention, or affection from others. It comes from cultivating a relationship with yourself that is rooted in self-respect, self-awareness, and self-worth. It's an inner state, not a borrowed feeling. So many people walk through life believing that happiness is waiting for them at the next milestone, a relationship, a promotion, a new house, a better body. They believe that once they get there, then they'll feel fulfilled, but that keeps moving and they never quite arrive. That's because external achievements and connections can only decorate your life. They can't build the foundation. When your foundation is built on validation, it will crack the moment that validation is removed. But when it's built on inner alignment, you become untouchable. You don't just feel happiness, you are happiness. There is a false belief that love from others is more powerful than love for self. That someone else's care can complete you. That someone else's attention can make you whole. But when you truly see your own value, you stop trying to be completed. You realize you were never incomplete to begin with. You were simply conditioned to look outward for what was always meant to be cultivated inward. This shift is radical. It's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Because when you stop relying on people to make you happy, you free yourself from emotional dependency. People come and go. Circumstances will rise and fall. Emotions will shift. But your ability to be joyful despite all of it, that's real freedom. That's strength. That's maturity. You don't have to wait for life to hand you peace. You have the power to create it right now by choosing to no longer be a victim of your environment. You train yourself to find gratitude in the ordinary. You develop the discipline to choose joy, even when things aren't perfect. You recognize that peace is not passive, it's a decision. And the decision begins with knowing your own value. When you understand your worth, you stop entertaining people who treat you as optional. You stop begging for time, attention, or recognition. You stop settling for temporary highs when you're capable of sustained wholeness. You stop chasing after love because you become love. And from that place, the relationships you build are no longer based on neediness, fear, or validation. They are based on authenticity and overflow. You give not to get, but because you are. When you shift from seeking happiness to generating it, your entire experience of life transforms. You start to enjoy your own company. You become proud of who you are becoming. You wake up with peace, not because everything is perfect, but because your sense of happiness is no longer for sale. You become more selective with who and what you give your time to, because your peace is now your priority. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You just live it. You embody it. You protect it. You rise from it. This is the place where real growth happens. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows, where you learn to be okay with yourself, where you nurture your own needs, where you give yourself the love you once begged for. It's in this space that you discover the power of contentment, not as complacency, but as a deep-rooted inner stillness that no one can take from you. Every quiet moment is an opportunity to evolve, to elevate, to examine yourself without interruption. But most people see loneliness as a void to escape rather than a space to grow. They reach for noise, distractions, validation, anything to drown out the silence. Yet it's in that silence where the greatest transformations are born. Loneliness, when embraced with the right mindset, becomes the most powerful training ground you'll ever encounter. It strips away the comforts, exposes your emotional dependencies, and forces you to confront the very parts of yourself that need healing, strengthening, and truth. Most people fear loneliness because they've never been taught how to be with themselves. They've never learned to sit still with their thoughts without judgment, to face their insecurities without flinching, or to breathe through the discomfort without numbing it. That fear of being alone isn't really about solitude, it's about not knowing what to do when the mirror of silence reflects back your unfinished stories. But if you choose to stay, if you choose to dig deep, if you choose to listen, then you unlock a version of yourself that is more resilient, more grounded, and more aligned than anything comfort could ever give you. In the training ground of loneliness, you gain insight into what you've been avoiding. You start to see the patterns you've repeated, the standards you've lowered, and the energy you've wasted. You begin to understand that not all company is good company, and that being surrounded doesn't always mean being supported. Some of the loneliest moments happen in the middle of crowded rooms, because real connection starts within. And when that internal connection is weak, no external relationship can compensate for it. That's why learning to thrive in solitude is essential. It teaches you to be whole, not half. Loneliness teaches you discipline. When no one is watching, when no one is cheering you on, when there's no applause or validation coming in, that's when you find out who you really are. Do you still show up for yourself? Do you still push forward? Do you still keep your standards high? The person who keeps moving without an audience is the person who's built on integrity. You learn to become accountable to your own growth. You stop performing for others and start building for yourself. Your goals become sacred. Your time becomes sacred. Your energy becomes sacred. This training ground also builds mental toughness. When you're alone, there's nowhere to hide. The fears come up, the doubts rise, the regrets, the pain, the comparisons, they all show their face. But instead of suppressing them, you learn to observe them. You learn that your thoughts are not facts and that emotions are not permanent. You discover that strength isn't found in avoiding difficulty. It's found in standing in it, breathing through it, and emerging from it stronger. Every time you choose to stay with yourself rather than escape, you reinforce your emotional resilience. You send a message to your mind and your soul. I've got me. I can handle this. The beautiful thing about making loneliness your training ground is that eventually it stops feeling like isolation. It starts to feel like presence. You stop chasing distractions. You stop searching for escape routes. You start becoming deeply rooted in the moment. And in that space, new ideas are born. Vision becomes clear. Creativity ignites. You begin to hear your intuition speak louder than fear. You begin to recognize your value outside of others' opinions. You begin to shift from dependence to inner freedom, the kind of freedom that can't be shaken by rejection, abandonment, or external change. Solitude becomes your teacher, and the lessons are profound. You learn patience. You learn self-compassion. You learn how to rest without guilt and reflect without shame. You begin to rebuild from the inside, stronger than before, wiser than before, more intentional than ever. And when you return to the world, you don't come back desperate for connection. You come back ready to share your growth. You bring presence instead of neediness, clarity instead of confusion, and self-trust instead of insecurity. Don't wait for someone to walk into your life to feel alive. That kind of dependency robs you of your power and delays the fulfillment you're capable of experiencing right now. Too many people are stuck in the cycle of waiting for a perfect partner, waiting for the right moment, waiting for circumstances to align so they can finally begin to live with purpose. But purpose isn't something you stumble into. It's something you build intentionally from the inside out. You don't need anyone to show up and hand you a life that feels meaningful. You need to step up and create it. Every single day is a blank canvas and you have the brush. You decide what gets painted, what gets erased, and what story is told through your actions. When you wake up in the morning, do you feel driven by something greater than fear? Do you feel energized by the goals you've set for yourself? Or are you just going through the motions, surviving another day of waiting for something or someone to spark your fire? The truth is, the spark you're searching for is already in you. It's just buried under years of conditioning, distractions, and external noise telling you that you need more before you can begin. What if instead of chasing someone to share a life with, you built a life so full that it inspires others just by existing? What if your daily routine was so meaningful, so energizing, so aligned with who you are that you no longer felt the void you used to call loneliness? That's the kind of life you can build when you take full responsibility for your energy, your focus, and your future. It starts by choosing yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a committed way. Committing to your growth, committing to your standards, committing to the kind of peace that comes from living in alignment with your values. Creating a life that excites you means doing the hard work of self-discovery. What sets your soul on fire? What makes you feel alive? It might not be what the world has conditioned you to chase. It might not be tied to money, fame, or relationships. It might be simplicity, service, creativity, solitude, movement. But you won't know until you remove the distractions and get honest with yourself. That honesty will light the path forward. It will guide your decisions, shape your habits, and direct your focus. And once you're aligned with that, your days begin to shift. You stop waking up dreading the monotony. You start waking up with anticipation, knowing that you're building something that matters even if no one else sees it yet. When you're living with purpose, loneliness turns into solitude, and solitude becomes sacred. You stop filling your calendar just to feel busy. You stop saying yes to people who drain your energy. You stop tolerating environments that suffocate your spirit. You become intentional about your inputs, what you watch, what you consume, what you listen to, who you surround yourself with. You realize that your time is not just a schedule, it's your life, and you only get one. So you begin to treat it like the precious resource it is. In this process, you also begin to feel proud of yourself, not because of how others see you, but because of how you carry yourself when no one's watching. Pride that comes from discipline, from consistency, from choosing what's right over what's easy. You build rituals that ground you. Morning routines, fitness, journaling, learning, building something that reflects who you are. You invest in your mental clarity, your emotional intelligence, your physical energy. Because when you pour into yourself, you no longer wait to be filled by others. You overflow. You become the source. This is where fulfillment begins, not in being chosen by someone else, but in choosing a life that reflects your worth. You stop needing an external source of meaning because you've already discovered it in your daily actions. You are not here to beg for love, validation, or belonging. You are here to rise, and rising doesn't begin when someone finally sees your worth. It begins the moment you see it yourself. Too often, people spend their lives waiting to be chosen, waiting to be noticed, waiting for someone to tell them you matter, you're enough, you're worth it. But every moment you spend waiting for someone else to crown you, you give away your own crown. You were not born to be picked like an option. You were born to choose yourself as a priority. That shift changes everything. There is a deep-rooted belief that being chosen by someone else means you've made it, that it validates your attractiveness, your value, your importance. But that belief is a trap, because the moment someone doesn't choose you, or worse, chooses someone else, you begin to doubt everything about yourself. Your self-worth becomes like a leaf in the wind, blowing in whatever direction someone else's opinion takes it. That's no way to live. That's not power. That's not confidence. And it's definitely not freedom. Choosing yourself means you stop outsourcing your identity. It means you stop molding yourself to fit the expectations of others just to be accepted. It means you stop lowering your standards in the hope that someone will meet you at their convenience. When you choose yourself, you stop apologizing for being too much, too ambitious, too emotional, too loud, or too driven. You own every part of who you are, not in arrogance, but in clarity. You know your values, you know your mission, you know your vision. You protect it like your life depends on it, because it does. When you finally choose yourself, you stop chasing relationships, jobs, opportunities, or friendships that require you to shrink. You stop convincing people to stay. You stop begging for closure, validation, or love. Because the truth is, the moment you choose yourself, you give yourself everything you once looked for in others. You give yourself peace. You give yourself safety. You give yourself permission to grow, to heal, to shine without guilt. You become the source, and from that place of strength, everything else begins to align, not because you're lucky, but because you're ready. Choosing yourself isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily commitment. It shows up in the boundaries you enforce, in the goals you chase, in the conversations you walk away from, and in the standards you refuse to lower. It's in the way you speak to yourself when no one's listening. It's in the way you show up when no one's watching. It's in the quiet decisions that no one claps for, but you make anyway because you know who you are and where you're going. And yes, choosing yourself can be lonely at first. It can feel isolating to let go of the people who once validated you but no longer align with your growth. It can be scary to walk away from comfort in pursuit of purpose. But on the other side of that discomfort is something far greater: self-trust. Once you've built that, no one can take it away from you. You become less reactive to the world because you're no longer searching for direction in it. You've already found it within. The power of choosing yourself is not about rejecting others. It's about refusing to reject yourself any longer. It's about honoring the vision you have for your life, even when it's inconvenient, unpopular, or misunderstood. It's about putting your growth above your fear, your healing above your history, and your future above your comfort. You begin to live not for applause, but for alignment, not for attention, but for purpose. And when that happens, the world begins to respond differently, not because you needed it to, but because you no longer need it at all. Set the bar so high in your mindset, discipline, and self-respect that no one can lower it. That bar is not for others to reach, it's for you to rise to every single day. Becoming your own standard means no longer living according to what the world expects from you, but instead defining your life by your own code. A code built on excellence, integrity, growth, and self-honor. It's deciding that you will not settle, not because you're hard to please, but because you know what you bring to the table. You've worked too hard, endured too much, and grown too far to accept anything that compromises your peace or potential. When you become your own standard, you no longer seek to impress, you aim to express. You express your authenticity, your truth, your power, your principles. You show up fully as yourself without needing validation to feel complete. You're not asking for approval, you're living in alignment. And in that alignment, you find something stronger than popularity. You find respect, starting with your own. Respect for your time, your energy, your dreams. Respect for the work you put in behind closed doors when no one's watching. Respect for your vision, even when it's not yet visible to others. Setting your own standard is about discipline, not perfection, discipline. It's about doing the uncomfortable work, making the hard choices, and holding yourself accountable when it's easier to let things slide. It's about waking up when you'd rather sleep in, showing up when motivation is gone, and staying consistent when no results are showing yet. This is how you become someone you admire, not someone who talks, but someone who acts. Someone who follows through. Someone who can be trusted with success because they've earned it. It's not just about what you do, but how you carry yourself. Your posture, your presence, your language, the way you enter a room, the way you look people in the eye, the way you handle setbacks. Not emotionally reactive, but emotionally intelligent. When you become your own standard, you stop being easily shaken. People's opinions stop defining your mood. Their praise doesn't inflate you, and their criticism doesn't deflate you, because you've already decided who you are, and no one else gets to rewrite that. It also means protecting your energy like it's sacred, because it is. You stop engaging in petty drama. You stop justifying your value. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to fit in when you've already found your fit within. You don't follow the crowd when you're already leading yourself. You don't chase opportunities, you prepare for them. And when they come, you're not surprised, you're ready. Being your own standard isn't about ego, it's about ownership. Owning your life, owning your journey, owning your outcomes. You no longer point fingers. You no longer play victim. You take full responsibility for who you are becoming. That responsibility is heavy at times, but it's also freeing because now you're in control. You're the author, not just the character. You're not waiting for life to happen. You're writing it, designing it, building it with purpose. And perhaps most importantly, you stop comparing. There is no competition when you are your own measure. You're not trying to be better than them. You're striving to be better than you were yesterday. That becomes your obsession. That becomes your mission. Growth is no longer optional. It's your lifestyle. And with that, you step into every room, every challenge, every opportunity Not looking to be approved, but looking to deliver what only you can. Because now you are no longer defined by the standard around you. You are the standard.